Good morning and Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year to you. Well, thanks for coming in so early.
Absolutely.
Here it is. This is what you're talking about.
The Fix Congress First plan. It's
Yes.
a 10-point plan to drain the swamp. When people say drain the swamp, what they're really doing is they're expressing frustration for the dysfunction, the insider swampiness of Washington, D.C. But no one really has said, okay, so what are you going to do to fix that culture? And that's why the 10-point plan that I'm putting out, I hope is the beginning of a conversation. But I'm serious about doing every one of these 10 points, starting with stripping Congress of all the exemptions that they voted themselves in laws. Why should they be able to set the laws for you and me and then exempt themselves from those same laws? So that's got to be the starting point.
Let's start with a specific example. Are you talking about postage? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about, for example, Freedom of Information Act. All the government agencies have to give you their documents if you request, hey, give me all documents that, have the word Paul Rudy in it. And there's a lot, by the way.
Hey, thank you for mentioning
But
that.
Congress exempts itself from transparency rules. Also, Congress exempted itself from Obamacare. And so you go through these laws and say, well, wait a minute. If you somehow are, saying that you're governed by the same laws as the rest of us, get rid of the exemptions. Another one, cut their pensions and perks. Eliminate the congressional pension. Eliminate the perks that they've been able to give themselves. Do you know they have a concierge doctor at the House of Representatives? You don't have to wait 6 months for an appointment. You just walk in. It's a doctor dedicated to the 435 members of Congress. Get rid of that. Put the members of Congress into the VA healthcare system. You're going to then start seeing some real reform. How about we require a read the bill first rule, where they have to sign under penalty of perjury that they have read every word in the bill before they vote on the bill. Now, that would make the bills a lot smaller, don't you think? Because none of them read the bills.
We have to pass it to see what's in it.
We got to pass it to see what's in it. Oh,
Yeah.
good old Nancy Pelosi, telling us that we don't have a right to look at legislation before it's voted on. So the 10 points in this plan, which you can get up my website, joincarldeMaio.org, are really the things that I've seen over the years and said, wait. They allow themselves to do what? A no budget, no pay rule. If they miss the budget deadline, which is September 30th, and they've not met the deadline in 20 years, they've only met it once. If you miss the budget deadline, every member of Congress forfeits their pay every single day thereafter. And so this is real tough accountability, and it's not being proposed in Washington because when they say drain the swamp, to them it's just words. To me, if you want better results on all the other issues that we care about, you got to start by fixing the corruption and the double standards that Congress has.
Something like this, Mr. DeMaio, has, I bet, from coast to coast, universal appeal.
Except for in Washington, D.C.
Except for where it counts, because you're going to be the most unpopular person at the cocktail party. Should you be elected?
When I was elected to San Diego City Hall and I talked about pension reform, I was the most unpopular person down there. The politicians got their pensions. They got the richest pension. The most lavish pension was reserved for the politicians. And we got pension reform done. We stripped the politicians of the pensions, of the perks. Remember those tickets they would get to the Qualcomm Sky luxury boxes?
Right, yeah.
Stripped them of that. The auto allowance, stripped them of that. $9,600 a year to drive to and from City Hall. I'm sorry, does anyone else in San Diego get a $9,600 per year stipend to drive to and from work locally? So you look at these things and people at the time said, Carl, you're not going to be able to get that done. We got it done. But it takes persistence. It takes someone who's willing to say, look, let's get the people involved and put the pressure and hold their feet to the fire. So it starts with laying out the ideas. I know it's going to make me unpopular in Washington. I kind of like that. But I do believe that the people want to see reforms like this done. And I'm trying to give some concrete focus reforms for the concept of draining the swamp.
You talk a lot about special interests and how you really need to get them out. They're paying for things they shouldn't be allowed to pay for.
Yep, for members of Congress.
And yet, that, as you pointed out, it's a lofty goal, and it's a lot to kind of change what's been going on for decades in Washington. So what's the first step in how to do that?
So one of the things that I'm proposing, it's reform number 10. And I think it's the most shocking one. And people are going to mock me for this, but I think the people are going to like it. Let's send Congress home. They go to Washington and they're there 3/4 of the year. My opponent, Mr. Issa, flew back only 3 times one year to his district. And I want members of Congress to be in their district. Like the founders anticipated, that they would only go to Congress for a few weeks and that they would come home and be doctors, farmers, lawyers, actually live in their communities. So why don't we, using modern technology, require that members of Congress stay in their district, and when they vote on Saturdays at a public town hall, so 435 town halls, and the legislation is listed in advance, 72 hours. People get to show up, look their member of Congress right in the eye and say, we don't like it or we do like it. The member of Congress then explains their position and votes by electronic device with no one knowing what the tally is. Here's why I want to do this. When the bills are voted on right now, and we've seen this, I think, when you watch like the impeachment vote a few weeks ago, they say 15-minute vote. But you notice the time runs out and it's 0, but they haven't called the question. The votes are still slowly trickling in. You know what's happening during that time? Arm twisting. The special interests and the politicos are offering favors and buying the votes and horse trading off the side of the House of Representatives floor. And that's where bad legislation gets passed. And so what I want to do is take out those middlemen, take out those special interests, get the members of Congress to be looking in the eyes of their constituents. The last people they should hear from are not the high-priced lawyers, the lobbyists, or the politicos in D.C. They should be looking at their constituents and saying, I'm going to vote yes or no, and feel the pressure in that room, the town hall model. Now, members of Congress are going to say, oh, you can never run Congress by having town halls every week, 435. First, we would have district Washington, D.C. work periods, maybe a couple weeks a year. But secondly, try it for a year. What's going to get, what? You're going to make Congress more dysfunctional? I don't think so. So try this for 1 year, see if the people like it, see if it results in more accountable government. And so that's what I'm offering here. Is everything in this plan going to work? No. But take a look at how dismal the system that we have currently is. We got to shake it up. And we can't just talk about draining the swamp. We got to say, here are the specific things we should try to change the culture and have more accountability and transparency in Washington. Okay, what's your 11th reform, Paul?
I think if you take my 11th reform seriously, you don't need the other 10.
Okay.
Term limits.
You know what? A lot of folks have said, why don't we just do term limits? Guess what, Paul? The state that has the toughest term limits, you're living in it, California. How's that working out? We got one-party control. We got socialism. We're losing our freedom. We've got rats and homeless people that are inhabiting the streets. If term limits were the silver bullet, I'd immediately sign on. But here's the thing. You change out career politicians, they go from one position to the other. The swamp dwellers are still there. And so I think that term limits, fine. We can add in a term limit as a number 11, but I think you got to have these fundamental reforms first. You got to get these folks to feel the heat of the people. And unfortunately, with all the political money, the term limits really haven't done a whole, lot of good out here in California. So that's why, originally I was a term limit supporter. I looked at California and said, gee, we got the toughest term limits in the country, and we got the worst government. And that's an awfully hard achievement to rank.
The census is going to bear that out as when we lose a congressional seat, right?
Yeah.
Well, when Gavin Newsom last week, tweeted that California was first in the nation on so many things, and that they were, causing people to look at California. I said, what do you mean you're first in the nation in people fleeing? People are literally leaving, and you're not first in anything. You're third world status in terms of a lot of the problems that he's created. So I think that these folks out here are out of touch. Same thing in Washington. And if we're going to fix it, we got to do something like the Fix Congress First plan. So hope to get support on it. Hope to be back in Congress and be able to raise these issues. They're not going to like it. I'm looking forward to causing some people to really feel uncomfortable back in Washington, D.C.
All right, Mr.
Carl,
Mile.
you're in your final stretch, so
8 weeks.
in a crowded field.
I
so
suspect we'll see each other again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for being here.